Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band podcast. I am your host, Benedict Hein. If you are new to the show, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. I hope the show will help you transform your mixes and recordings because this is what we set out to do. If you are already a listener and if you're coming back, thank you for coming back. And we would really appreciate it if you go to Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast platform, wherever you listen to the show, and you leave us a review there if you got any value out of these past episodes. And if you are on social media, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that, please share the episode, make a screenshot, post it there, tag us, and also leave us a question in this post, because if we see that, if you tag us and we see that, we are more than happy to answer your question on the show and give a shout out to your band or you as an artist. So just make a screenshot and share that in your stories. And thank you for that already. This will help, by the way, this is not just because we love to see these and answer your questions, but this really helps us reach more people like you and help even more people make better recordings. Now, one more thing before we get into this episode. We have a free mixing guide out there that is pretty new as of the recording of this episode. It's called Standout Mixes, the DIY Musician's Guide to Exciting Mixes that Stand Out and Connect. And if you want that, you can go to the selfrecordingband.com/standoutmixes. It's completely free. It's an in-depth video tutorial plus a checklist that you can go through. And it teaches you what really matters when it comes to mixing, like the essentials, the stuff that pros never skip, but so many people completely ignore. And I promise you, if you follow these things, you can do it completely in your DAW. No external plugins needed, nothing fancy. You can do it with what you already have. If you follow these things in the steps in this checklist, the things I show in the video, your mixes will be like instantly better. Instantly, because this is stuff that really, really, really matters if you want your mixes to connect, and nobody's really doing that. So that's why it's called Standout Mixes, because it hopefully will make your mixes stand out. So the selfrecordingband.com/standoutmixes. Go grab that for free. Now on to today's episode. As always, I'm here with my friend and co-host Malcolm Owen Flood. Hello, Malcolm. How are you?
Hey, Benny. I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm great too. Despite the fact that I don't know what I've done this night, but I can barely move and breathe because my back hurts crazy. So something went wrong, like a truck or something hit me this night. I don't know.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, you got a long day of sitting in a chair because we are doing our little community Mixes Unpacked Q&A meetup after this in a little bit. I know. So I'm very excited for that. Listeners, we're also approaching our 150th episode. This is our 149th, I think, that we're recording right now. Super excited. So if you are enjoying the show, do what Benny said. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and ask us a question on Instagram. It'd be sweet to answer a bunch of questions for 150th episode, actually. That'd be really cool. Except for by the time this comes out, that episode will have already been recorded. It's not going to work.
No, probably not.
But we'll still answer those questions.
Exactly. We're happy to answer them on the 151st or 2nd, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's start the new year with like a bunch of questions from you guys. That would be sweet. Yeah, totally. It's wild that we're approaching like 150. That's pretty cool. Like,
oh, it's so cool.
The fact I wasn't really sure if we should share that or not, like the streaming numbers that we have and stuff, because it's likely it's pretty irrelevant and also really hard to track accurately. But I think we should say that, or I just want to say that it's not only the 150th episode, but we also crossed 50,000 downloads, like individual downloads for this podcast. And I just want to say that because it doesn't sound like a lot for a podcast that's been out there for so long. But A, you can't really track it super accurately. And B, I think 50,000 individual downloads is actually pretty wild. Like thinking that we've been talking to a stadium full of people, basically, you know, like
for a long time.
For a long time. Yeah.
An hour to an hour long episodes. That's like, it's many hours of people listening to tips on how to record. It's so cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's wild, really. If you would try to do that in the real world, it would be close to impossible to pull that off. But it's thanks to podcasting and the internet, it's possible, and it's kind of crazy. And I feel, I'm just grateful to have that opportunity. And not only are people listening, but they are engaging. They are following our advice. We constantly get messages or shares and posts where we see that people actually do what we teach and that they love it and that it leads to results. So thank you for being a listener. Thank you for another year of this. And we hope we will continue that for a long time. And we will constantly improve the episodes. And that's also why we need your questions, by the way, and your feedback, because we need to know what you like, what you want to know, what you're still missing so that we can improve. That's why the engagement is also important. And then, of course, as I said, we want to reach even more people like you and really transform the DIY recording scene, sort of. Yeah.
I've got one more request for our listeners. When you reach out to us with your questions, let us know where you're from. That's my favorite thing, is finding out that somebody in a place I've never been to is listening. I just can't get over that. I love it the most. So let us know where you're calling in from, and that's just fun for me to see like how the self-recording band community is spread around the world.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I know that it's from everywhere, just because the small amount of people that I have in my coaching program, the ones that I work with one-on-one on a regular basis, they are from Australia, the US, Canada, Europe, like from everywhere. And that's just a small part of our audience. So really curious to hear where you all are from. And cool. All right. So, yeah, tonight is the meetup. I think it's not really worth talking about that because it's already happened.
Yeah, it's already gone, but there's a perfect segue. We've been talking about where you're all from and our audience and the community of listeners we have, and that we're doing a Q&A with our community, and specifically the people that picked up our Mixes Unpacked course a while back, which I think maybe is going to be available again soon. Benny, you're the pro on that. The segue is that we're talking about why you need to leave your studio and your comfort zone on a regular basis and build community with real people. And, that makes it sound like it has to be in person. It doesn't actually have to be in person, but the community and networking is really what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
Benny and I want to connect with our listeners more, and so that's why we're asking you to contact us on Instagram and stuff like that and get on the Facebook community. But this is about you, our listeners, connecting with, it could be other listeners because you're all in bands, you're all musicians. It's actually the perfect people to be connecting with, but also people in your local music scenes and your, recording scenes, all of that. We want you to expand your connections out, and we're going to talk about the benefits of why that's important today.
Absolutely, totally. So we think that together is better, and that you should leave your studio every once in a while. And it can be hard because that also means leaving your comfort zone. Many of us are introverts as creatives. You can do almost everything from home alone, but we still think you should leave your studio from time to time. You can start online, build connections online, but at some point in person is even better. But either way, just be part of a community. And in this episode, we're going to explain why we think that is a great idea and why it will help you improve your skills even faster. And it's not just because of your skills and your music. It's just fun. And it's like, I think it's better for your life in general, honestly. Yeah. So, the thing is, a lot of us are cave dwellers, right? We are lone studio wolves, always figuring things out on our own. And we are, as I said, we are often introverts. And I know that because I've talked to so many people one-on-one. I know that a lot of people are kind of uncomfortable reaching out to strangers or going to meetups, even if they go to shows, it's hard for them to walk up to someone and start a conversation, especially if they're strangers. So that's really hard for a lot of people. And in our world, there seems to be a big percentage of the people here seem to have that problem. I don't know why that is, but a lot of creatives have that. And it's totally fine. But there's ways to overcome it too. And I think you'll benefit from that. And when I think that both Malcolm and I can't say I was much of an introvert, or I've always been on tour with my bands and been to shows and stuff like that. But still, I think once I started actively seeking community, reaching out to people, building relationships, I think that has done a lot for me, my career, and the way I produce music and all of that. And I think, Malcolm, for you, it's the same. So we also want to share our stories and how it helped us and what we did and what we still do to nurture these relationships, to build new relationships and all these things. Because even though I'm not particularly an introvert, or it doesn't really feel hard to me, I still sometimes have to make myself go somewhere. Like, I sometimes don't feel like going somewhere, to a meetup or to a show or party or whatever. Sometimes it's just easier and more comfortable to stay home with the family, or just watch Netflix or whatever in the evenings, or just tweak the mix for an hour more or something. But every single time, almost every single time I went out, even though I didn't feel like it, and I still every single time I went there, it was worth it. Almost every single time. I can't remember a single time where it was like, I should have stayed home. That almost never happens. I'm always glad I went. And, there's different things that happen. Opportunities can show up out of nowhere, seemingly. Sometimes it starts with a small conversation, but that turns into long-lasting relationships. Collaborations can happen. Sometimes your skills improve all of a sudden just because you get some valuable insight or tip from somebody. You never know. Something happens. And sometimes nothing happens that day, but over time, things seemingly out of nowhere start to appear. And that is because you went out and met people. And this is what we want to talk about, I think.
Absolutely. I would like to tell kind of a long story.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a podcast. We're allowed to, I think.
Yes.
This is the exact format we're meant to do that.
Yeah.
So as some of our listeners will know, I had a band called Band of Rascals, and that was like my primary focus for many years of my life. We had a really good run, and I got to go on a lot of big tours, and it was awesome. But I am definitely an introvert. But I am an introvert that knows that it's really important to be extroverted. Kind of, I don't want to say as much as you can be, but for me, it feels like as much as I can be.
Yeah.
So, like, there's so many stories I could tell, like how networking and getting out in person led to us getting our management, which was changed everything. But the story I want to tell, because it happened most recently, is about a radio station in the closest city to where I live, Victoria, BC, Canada, called The Zone, 91.3 The Zone. They're a great modern rock radio station. We are a modern rock band. And ever since I've wanted to be a band, they've been doing a Band of the Month program, essentially, where they feature a local artist once a month throughout the year. And we had our band starting out, Band of Rascals, years ago. This was like 2013 or 2014 or something, I think. And we wanted to get on the radio, of course. So we were applying for this, and we ended up getting it. I'm obviously skipping a lot of details. We got it in like 2015, I think. And if there's probably two things I can equate to all the success we had. Like, there was getting that radio spot, and then there was getting our manager. And both did come from networking, make no mistake. I mean, we had to have music that they liked and an audience and stuff like that, but they knew our names when both those things happened. We weren't just they didn't just stumble across our music and say, yes, we're choosing you. We were on first name basis with the people that we connected with. So networking was involved there. Okay, continuing to skip forward. Just like a month ago now, the same radio station reached out to me and said, hey, we're doing a community meetup in Victoria, where local bands can come out and ask us questions about how to get on the radio with this same program that your band got back in 2015. And they asked me if I would like to be a panelist. So I said, hell yes, that'd be really exciting. I would love to. So I got to go and talk to people about how much it changed my life, because that really launched our radio life. They were a huge part of they were our springboard for radio play. And then also just strategies for approaching them to get it on there. And there was people asking recording questions. It was great. But what I noticed more than anything was, I mean, the room was full, but there was a lot of people there. I'm very in the scene, so I know most of the players. There was a lot of people that talk the talk that were not there. And they talk about how they're going to get on the radio this year. They got this new single that's going to be unstoppable, whatever. They just got to record it. They're all talk. And they weren't at this event where the radio literally invited them to come meet them in person and ask questions about how to get on the radio. And it just blew my mind. It's like, how could you miss that opportunity? And I mean, there was a lot of people not there that fall into that category of talkers to me. It really was like, wow. You couldn't come to this one thing. It was so important. And it was like, I could see all these connections happening from the other people that did show up. Whereas oh, and actually I could already point to it. There's a concert happening this month that I think all three of the bands on the bill were at that event. It's like little teams just were built at this one event, and I know they're all going to be on the radio next year.
Yeah.
It's all clearly laid out in front of me now. It's like they showed up, they met the people, they're good, and now they're playing a show together, they're building an audience. These three bands will be on the radio next year, where the people that did not show up, it's going to be a harder go.
Yeah. 100%.
So that is... I'm sure all of those musicians would have rather have been in their little cave making music, but they showed up there, and it was probably for at least a couple of people in that room, it's going to be a night that they're going to remember for the rest of their life when they look back at the success their band's going to have this coming year.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And yeah, as you said, it's wild that people wouldn't use an opportunity like that, right? But it's also not rare for some reason. Like, the stories like these are actually pretty common, and I don't know why that is. It's the same with I mean, we don't have a huge audience, but when we offer something like a meetup, or when I ask people to leave questions after they watched a course or something like that, only a fraction of those people will do that every single time, and that's totally normal. It's like that in every single program, and it's completely for free, right? It just requires you to actually leave your questions there, and then we will answer them, or actually show up to that free meetup or that call, and then you get your questions answered. And I just don't get why you wouldn't use that, or why you wouldn't be there. And with a meetup like that, where literally what you say you want to achieve, like the people who can help you do that are there, and why wouldn't you be there? Like yeah.
It's madness.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I'm sure some people, had to work or whatever, but
yeah,
I know that a lot of people just didn't go because I don't know. Like I really don't know. You gotta go to those things. So like, I guess that's really going to be the point we're driving home, is like, look for these kind of things, because they can lead to amazing changes in your life, in your career. Benny and I met in an education platform community. So Benny and I are both huge into investing in our own skill sets. And I can't remember which one it was, honestly, that we met in, Benny. But we met in a Facebook community, and then we started a mastermind group from there, which is something we're going to talk about. And then we eventually started this podcast as a result of that. We've never met in person, but I spend more time with Benny than I do with anybody other than my fiance.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. And I think it started in some community, but it also really started with you reaching out to me. You sent me a Facebook message, I think, or something, which also is something that a lot of people, it's hard for some people to do that, but you just did it. You reached out to me, you asked something, I replied, and then, started from there. And we had no idea what will come from that. Nobody knew that we're going to do a podcast together and all these things, but it just developed. It happened. And yeah, and it all started in a Facebook group. Yeah, for sure. And then I just want to say though, that it is not your fault if you don't do that right now, because you might be, I don't know how you've been brought up or what happened or why you are an introvert and stuff. So I'm just saying that because for the longest time, like the first couple of years of my career, I didn't do any of that too. Didn't have a mastermind. I didn't go to meetups. I wasn't part of like educational communities. So I know what it's like to be a person who doesn't do that, but you can't change. If somebody tells you that it is a good idea, like we do now, you can change. It's not your fault that you're not already doing it, but you can make a decision to do it from now on, because we really think it helps, and it will help you. And it doesn't cost you anything other than like getting out of your comfort zone. And to give you an example, how that changed for me, for example, is I didn't do anything at first. Then I started, it started with some of the educational platforms that I joined. The first time I paid for like education, and that was true. I did that in the mixing and recording world. I paid for the education there. But then also I got a business course that Malcolm got too. So we educated ourselves on how to actually run a business, because I've been running one for years, but it wasn't really working because I didn't take that part serious and didn't know that I had to. And so I was basically working all the time, but also broke all the time. And I wanted to change that. So I educated myself in that regard. And then in that business coaching community, there was other mixing engineers and producers. It was specifically made for people like us. And then in there, we built mastermind groups where we helped each other out. We shared our like struggles, and we gave each other advice. And so new communities and like new relationships were formed there. And then it all started with it was a matter of like a couple of months where I started all these different programs. And within a year of doing that, or a year and a half of doing that, mind you, like before that, I've never done anything like it. I've not been part of a community. I've never done anything. And within a year or a year and a half of doing that, I saw the benefit of it, and it was so huge that I decided to do things like fly to the US to Orlando to a meetup there, pay like $3,000 or something total for the whole trip, just to be there for 4 days or something, 3 or 4 days with other engineers, be there in an in-person meetup that was not cheap at all, and that required me to fly across the Atlantic and back. But I knew that it's going to be worth it because I'm going to meet people there, and there were amazing speakers there that I could learn from. I've built new relationships, or I've nurtured existing relationships by meeting those people in person. So from doing nothing in that regard to spending a couple €1,000 to go to a meetup in person on the other side of the planet, a lot changed for me, right, in that short amount of time. And I've never stopped doing these things since. I'm still in a mastermind. We're meeting, every single week for the past 4 or 5 years. I still reach out to people. I still join new communities. So it's something I will hopefully always do because it's really paid off.
Yeah, it's totally. I know that one of your mastermind members has been on the podcast as well. So like it's another like point of collaboration of how these things can spread out and just really like the people you know dictate how your life turns out in a way.
Yes.
It's so valuable. I got asked recently from a band. I know like we're a recording podcast and this topic's a little broader than that, so I hope everybody's still enjoying it. But I got asked recently, like, oh, how do I get a manager? I was like, oh, do you know a manager? And they're like, no. I'm like, I'm shrugging at the camera if you're listening, because it's like you have to know one.
Yeah.
If you and just because you know one doesn't mean they're going to manage you either. But like you can't, and say that goes for everything. Like I want a record label. Do you know somebody that works at a record label? That's going to help a lot. A huge amount. Do you want to get played at a radio station? If you know somebody at that radio station, it's a huge perk. And this goes beyond that as well. Like if you go to a meetup with a bunch of musicians in your scene, you're going to end up making contacts that know people at different venues that maybe have some recording space. Maybe you don't have a place to do drums and that person does. There's all of these things. People can, trade gear among, or like share gear, whatever, to make things happen. That's how you're going to find jam spaces. If you're in a city where it's hard to find a jam space, you're going to meet other bands that have jam spaces. Maybe you can do a share kind of thing. There's no limit to the perks that come from having a network.
Yes. And a network means that these are two-way relationships. It's not that you are going out there trying to get things from people, but you have to be an active part of some sort of community and actually help people and bring value to the community, because that's the only way it works, right? And you don't do it because you want to get something out of it, but you'll get something out of it automatically by just being there, but having those conversations, being good to people, being kind, and then it will come eventually automatically. You don't go in there expecting something, it just happens. Just be a good person, like you would do with other relationships in your life too, hopefully. And so, yeah, and the whole, to bring it back to like musicians, as you said, it's not only about, my example was about being a producer and doing something for your career, but also as a musician. I just started, or I'm part of a new band for a year now. I've been talking about that on the podcast too. And it was kind of crazy to see what happened there. So we were a completely new band. Nobody knew we existed. Like it's like a completely fresh start, basically. And we just, we had a bunch of songs and we recorded them, and we didn't play any shows. We didn't do anything really other than plan the band, get some songs out, and just get started basically for a couple of months or almost a year. And then all of a sudden, somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, I booked a show for you." I think it was 7-8 years ago, I don't know, with my other band. Back in the day, we were like touring DIY. We played small shows, 10, 20 people sometimes. We drove across Europe in a van. We paid for that tour basically because we got so little money on each show that we paid whatever was left. Like it wasn't even enough to cover gas and van rent and all of that. So for a while we did that just to be in the scene, just to play shows, just to meet people, just to have a good time. And so we did that for a while. And over time, it got better. And of course, our shows and tours got better. But we did that in the beginning. And now with this new band, one person reached out and said, "Hey, I booked a show for you, I don't know, 8 years ago or something. And I just heard that you have a new band." I was already surprised by that this guy still was following me and knew that I had a new band. But then also turns out he runs a DIY sort of record label in the hardcore punk scene in Germany. And he now is like, he's releasing our record now, our upcoming record on vinyl. And the label is, they're doing that for us. So we now have a record deal with a small label, even two, like they collaborated with another label. So there's another community collaboration thing going on. So now we have two record labels out of nowhere who approached us and want to release our record because they like these songs. And I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have reached out if there wouldn't have been this personal connection. Like the fact that he liked the songs, I'm sure that wouldn't have been enough for him to invest in us and release that record. I'm sure it was because we already knew each other and he liked my old band and there was this existing connection. And so, sometimes years later, things like that can happen.
Yeah, totally. That's exactly the point. It's actually important, I think. It's never right away.
Yeah.
When you meet somebody, it's not like, "Hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm going to change your life."
Yeah. If it is, run. If it is like that, run.
That. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a warning. That's a big red flag. Get out of there.
Yeah.
Wash your hands.
Yeah.
But it does take time to build a real relationship, but meeting them is the first step, of course. Yeah, so we've talked about like masterminds, shows, groups like Benny and I met in, and please do go join the Self-Recording Band community on Facebook if you haven't already. That's a no-brainer. Parties and shows like concerts and stuff, you're going to meet people there. Bands go to bands shows. That just seems to be a universal law. So
Yeah.
you'll meet people in your network there, I'm sure. But
And if you go to shows, sorry to cut you off, Malcolm. I just want to say something about the shows. If you go to shows, don't just be there, because I've made that mistake too. I've been going to I don't know how many shows for years without ever approaching anybody. Like I was just there watching the show and then I went home. But if you go to shows, just if you like the band and if they are approachable, just tell them that you like the show. Just start a conversation, a genuine, honest conversation. Just tell them that you like the show, or walk up to the owner of the venue and start a conversation, or just connect with somebody in there. It's not hard, and most people are not mean, so you can just say something to someone, even though it feels hard at the beginning. But try to do that, because I've missed a lot of opportunities when I was too shy to do that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely, again, the hard part, especially if you're introverted, is taking that step. Try to.
Yeah.
And if there's no Facebook community for your scene, like most cities will have some kind of like, so-and-so city music scene Facebook group. That's a good thing to be a part of course. And you'll probably, hopefully somebody will start like a meetup based on that once the group is a certain size. So even just seeing people's kind of names and profile pictures floating around eventually leads to connections and lets you keep a pulse on your scene as well, which is really helpful, I think.
And you can start something like that. You can be the one starting a local Facebook group or a local in-person meetup thing, or host a party or whatever. You can come up with creative things. And then it's not so hard for you to start conversations, because if you start something like that, and you can do it online without even having to talk to somebody, but if you start it and people actually come to the event that you planned, they will already know who you are, and it's going to be much easier to start conversations, right? So sometimes it might even be easier for you to be the host of something like that than to attend something and then walk up to whoever does it. So if there's nothing in your area, maybe you can become sort of the hub who knows everybody and who organizes these things, right? So
told it. That's why I do a podcast.
Yeah.
It's people come up knowing who I am, and I have to figure out who they are. But like they started the conversation with me. It's perfect.
Exactly.
And yeah, you can DM people on Facebook as well, or whatever social media platform, and build connections that way. If you want to, you can be helpful as well, of course. Well, I mean, making a group is helpful, but like I've seen people make music scene like Spotify playlists, so it's just bands from the scene. Mm-hmm. That's a great way to just kind of like create something of value, but also it's going to start conversations. People will be thankful that you did that.
Yeah, totally. And I think we should say, why would you want to do all these things if this is a self-recording band podcast and not like a business podcast or something? I think that, first of all, as like most bands want to achieve something. Most bands want to reach more people, want to get bigger, want to be known, that's one thing. But the other thing is, there are a lot of self-recording artists out there these days. Like in almost every band, there's at least one person who knows how to operate a DAW, or at least they do their own demos or something. So if for you the only thing that you want to do is get better at making records, then still at a show or at these community meetups or wherever, like you will meet other people who do that too. So that's they are almost everywhere, like in every band. And you can go to specific like recording related meetups or Facebook groups. It doesn't have to be like, if there's no band for you that you want to grow, if you're a solo artist and just doing it from home, then be a part of a recording community or whatever. But just know that whatever your goal is, whatever you want to get better at, other people can help you get there faster, always. So this is why this is, I think, why we want to make this episode. Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that this kind of does, I mean, we're trying to avoid talking about it because by the time you hear this, it'll be over. But the Q&A we're doing in a few hours is a prime example of a budding community where, in this case, it's a course that people have paid for, but it comes with the bonus of having, a community aspect where we're doing this meetup and people could meet each other in that forum. And Benny's coaching clients, I'm sure, are always interacting with each other in that community as well. So paid communities are totally a thing as well. And there's perks to a paid community. You are invested in it and more likely to take the step of starting a conversation because you actually feel like you need to make sure you get what you paid for out of it. Not everybody works that way, but I definitely do. So again, Benny and I met in a very expensive paid community, actually. That was like one of the most expensive course I've ever bought, I think. But by far the most beneficial course I've ever taken as well.
Yes, absolutely. And the numbers prove that. So if I look at my numbers, because the coaching program that I have, the Self-Recording Syndicate, is not cheap. It's a one-on-one program with a group coaching element. It goes on for over a month. So it's not something that is like something like an online course that you buy and go through real quick and then forget about it. But it's like it really gets you results. And it really requires my personal attention. So that's why it can't be cheap, of course. And because it's not cheap, there are not tons of people in there. Like currently, I think I have 17 or 18 students in there. If I would run a free community of 17 or 18 people and I would offer weekly group coaching calls, nobody would show up. Or like one or two people would show up. Nobody probably. Yeah. And with my paid coaching people, at least like 5, 6, 7, 8, whoever has time. People have to work sometimes and we have different slots, so not everybody shows up all the time. But a handful of people always shows up, despite it being such a small community, and that is because they pay for it. And if you pay, you pay attention. That's the saying, and it's true because you want to get something out of it, and you're invested in it. And as a result, people see results, right? It works. Versus, watching countless hours of free YouTube stuff very rarely gets someone somewhere. I mean, it gets you somewhere, but not as far as like the other stuff. And so it doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money now on a paid community. But I'm just saying, for us, this whole thing, being in paid communities, and it might be the kick in the pants that you need too. But just know that you don't need that. If you understand the value of a community, you can make yourself go to free stuff too. Like you already have access to that, and you can start with that. If you, for whatever reason, can't make yourself do that, then you probably need a paid community. And there's other benefits to being in a paid community. But I'm just saying, there's lots of free opportunities out there that you only have to take. And yeah, so yeah, there's other things like, what else is there? Like trade shows. I just put it on the list there because sometimes, depending on what you're doing, there is like, I don't know what about the US or Canada, but there's like something like, what is it over there? What's it? I forget the name. NAM show, something like that.
Right.
Stuff like that. I don't know how likely it is that you run into someone there and build relationships depending on what type of person you are. It's the same thing. You probably need to walk up to someone and make connections. There's similar stuff here in Germany too. I just put it there because if you like going there anyways, I just know that some musicians like to go there to check out guitars and like the nerdy stuff. And a lot of introverts go there not to build relationships, but just to check out the gear. But you could, if you're already there because you like the gear or whatever, you could also as well use that to build relationships because you're in a spot with hundreds, if not thousands, of other musicians, right? So don't just go there to check out the latest guitar gear or recording gear, but actually try to find interesting people and talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's certain, I keep going business mode here.
Yeah.
That's where my brain just clicks into that. But there's like also certain music festivals usually in most countries, I think, where it's like a music festival. There's concerts, but it's also very industry based. There's like South by Southwest. There's Canadian Music Week up here in Toronto. There's things like that where you can just go and watch music, but there's also like panels and speakers and stuff like that, and minglers, and you just go and you're going to make connections if you put yourself out there. And that is where the type of people that are hard to meet are actually all in one place for once.
Yeah,
that's really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. That's the one. That's why everybody goes to NAMM and like these things. So yeah, totally. What you might be asking yourself now is, why would I want to meet other musicians? I want to reach an audience. Like, why other musicians? And this is not, that doesn't do anything for my band. Again, you can educate each other and give each other tips and advice and so on and so forth. But also, I think that if you are trying to get better shows, if you are trying to get on playlists or whatever, other musicians, other artists that you can partner with can do a lot for you. That's why I say it's worth doing that. I've seen a lot of great collaborations where like one band, as you said, Malcolm, someone makes a playlist and puts all their friends' bands on that playlist, and then they make one too, and then one of the playlists actually gets popular. Or sometimes people have access to a venue somewhere close. Like I have a venue here in my hometown that is pretty legendary at this point, and a lot of big US bands have played there in front of just 100 or 200 people, including bands like Jimmy Eat World, for example, in the 90s and stuff like that. So and we have access to that venue, and we could always organize shows there and invite bands. And so if you have access to something like that, you can invite bands that you've met somewhere at a show, at a trade show, at whatever community event, you can actually make connections with these bands, invite them to your venue, host a show there, whatever, and then most people will do something for you in return. You don't have to expect it, but maybe they invite you to their venue, or maybe they take you on tour, or maybe you don't know what comes from those types of things, or the other way around. Maybe they like your music and they have a venue and will invite you, or these sort of things. So don't just think about how to reach a new audience like directly, but maybe you can connect with other musicians who already have an audience or who have something you don't have, and if you partner up, you can combine your superpowers. That's why this is important. Yeah.
Helpful people get helped.
Yes. The reciprocity effect is real. We as humans want to do that. If something does something good for us, we feel the need to give something back. Hopefully, most people at least, in some way, shape, or form. So yeah. Then the other way to connect is, I think, just by DMing people. If you see some artist, some band, or whoever interesting person you want to connect with, if you see someone post interesting stuff online, and sometimes they even want you to DM them. I do that all the time too. I post stuff and then I'm like, hey, if you struggle with XYZ, or if you have a question about this, or if you have experience with this, or if you've done something like that, just DM me. I'm genuinely interested to hear about that. A lot of people, like most people, don't do that, but you can do that. You can just DM me and reach out, and we can have a conversation. And you can do that with other people too. So if you see something like that, then just do it and reach out to them, or be proactive and just start a conversation by sending someone a DM. Not everybody will respond, and that's okay too. You have to respect that. So don't be creepy, of course, but you can just start conversations online if that's more comfortable for you. You can comment on other people's posts, so that's even more comfortable for most people, I think. If you can just leave a nice comment somewhere, you can leave a question in a comment, you can congratulate someone if they've achieved something in a comment or whatever, and maybe they'll get back to you, and this conversation starts there. That's the easy way to start something like that if you have a hard time leaving the studio.
Totally. Yeah, it's a very light touch way of building a relationship slowly.
Yeah. And then finally, there's what we do right now. You can create content and then interact with your audience and start conversations there. So if you don't want to reach out directly to anybody, not even in a comment or DM, maybe you can create content. Maybe you can, I don't know, it can be anything. You can do a podcast like we do. You can run a YouTube channel. You can even blog and hope that, there's successful blogs out there. And if people comment or share your blog, you can reach out to them, whatever medium you choose, but you can create some sort of content, social media content, whatever, and build an audience that way. And even if it's a small audience, at some point, someone will reach out to you and you can then use that to build a relationship. So that is the other approach. If there's really no way for you to reach out to people, then maybe make people reach out to you by creating valuable stuff for them. So there's multiple ways to pull that off. What matters is at the end that you make yourself leave your chair every once in a while and go outside, talk to people. It's good for you as a human. It just feels good, and it will help you in one way or another. Definitely, there's no way it's not going to help you if you surround yourself with like-minded people, exchange ideas, meet up regularly, and just have that element in your life. It's definitely worth it, and you have to remind yourself of that too regularly, because for me, for example, when I transitioned to mixing only and then doing the coaching and courses and that sort of stuff, my life got a lot lonelier in the beginning. So because I didn't have bands in the studio anymore, I wasn't on tour with my own band anymore, I was doing remote work only. Then COVID came around, of course, and everything got even more lonely. So all of a sudden I found myself in a spot where my wife was telling me, hey, you need to go out more and you need to talk to people again and you need to have people in your life, because you're sitting in the studio all day and then you're home, and you remember when you were out at shows all the time and did all these things. And I was like, yeah, you're right, I probably should do that more. And I have an online community, of course, and I do all that, but still I have to remind myself to not forget that and do that again in a way, and do that proactively. So that's an ongoing thing, I think, because today it's so easy to just do everything in front of the computer. So
yeah, I think most introverts would agree that you have that dread of going to the social thing, but once you get there, you're glad you did. It's fun. It's kind of like working out or exercising in any way too. It's just like, I don't want to do this. And then you go and you're like, this is great.
Yeah.
And much like exercise, the more you do it, the easier it gets to remember that, and not like the little speed bump of getting over and actually doing it gets easier and easier, and you just eventually are like, it's normal.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And just like exercise, as you said, every single time, I don't remember a single workout where I felt worse after the workout than before. Like even my worst workouts, it was still, after a while, I was still feeling better than before the workout. And it's the same thing with these social things. So I want to say one thing about the masterminds, because I'm not sure if everybody is aware of what a mastermind actually is, because that's something that's so important for me. So a mastermind basically, and I didn't know that before I was in that business course. So a mastermind is, in our case, like what we do is a group of people that meet regularly, and we do it online via Zoom, but we also now have had our first in-person meeting after 4 years. But we meet every single week online, and we are all in the music world. Like, we are all producers, mixers. There's one acoustician in there, Jesko, you know him from the podcast, Jesko Loan. But we all are in the music industry in one way or another, and we just help each other out. We ask each other questions about our businesses. We have sort of a hot seat where somebody gets asked like uncomfortable questions sometimes, but it really helps that person discover like blind spots in their business and like improve. We also encourage each other. We celebrate our wins together. We just help each other. You could say that we are competitors, but we don't view it that way. We view it as like we are peers, and there is enough for everybody, and we can help each other out. And this has been super, super helpful for us, because if you have a group of people who want to do the same thing and you encounter a problem, then probably one of these other people in the group has already had that problem and knows how to solve it. So it's almost every single time when I go into our mastermind meeting and I ask a question, some roadblock that I ran into, somebody has an idea on how to solve that. Just the fact that there are 4 or 5 brains together who can solve that, that alone is an advantage. But oftentimes somebody has had that problem already, and they know the solution. And so in your case, it might not be a business thing, but it could be just about recording. It could mean, you're about to record something you've never recorded before, but somebody else in the group has already done it, and that person can share their experience with you. And you can cheer each other on. You can hold each other accountable. That's also pretty cool about a mastermind group, because if you say to a group of people that you're going to do X, Y, Z, you're much more likely to actually do it if those people know about it and hold you accountable. So there's a lot of benefits to that. So if you can form something like that, if you know a couple of like-minded musicians, other bands that you can meet regularly with, like bi-weekly, weekly, whatever you want to do, even once a month, and just hold each other accountable, tell each other about your goals, tell about, like, cheer each other on, celebrate the wins together, help each other out, give feedback, share the latest mixes or songs you've written and give each other feedback on that. That can do a lot for you, and it definitely has for me. And it started as an assignment in that business course, so we had to form that mastermind, but we kept it going. Like, now it's 4 years after this course has ended for us, and we still keep it going and meet every week because it's so valuable.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we've made a pretty compelling case for the importance of networking and getting out into your musical community. I think it's pretty hard to deny after an episode like this.
Oh yeah.
You don't want to be a lone soldier.
No, you don't. Definitely not. Yeah. Yeah. I can't think of anything else to add to this. I think this was really, we've done it.
I think some final calls to action. Join our Facebook community.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because if you haven't and you're listening to this, like, what? That's obvious. Do that. Do hit us up with your questions on Instagram. That's another thing that I'm going to be disappointed if you don't do after listening to this for like 40 minutes or whatever we've been recording for. So yeah, implement. It's one thing to listen to us, and it sounds like you're having a conversation with us, but we can't hear you. So you got to, it's a two-way street.
Absolutely. And we give you multiple opportunities actually there that you can take advantage of. You can join that completely free Facebook community. You can download one of our free things that we create for you that are actually valuable in and of themselves, but it also will lead to you being on our email list. And so we will reach out to you via email. And in those emails, I ask people to reply to the emails and ask me questions or give me more info about them and what they're struggling with so I can help them better. So there's another call to action for people to get in touch with me and ask questions and share more about themselves so I can serve them. So there's that. Then you can book a completely free call with me, a one-on-one coaching call, and I will sit down for an hour with you personally and listen to your music and give you advice and feedback and show you like a step-by-step action plan that you can then go implement on your own or together with me in the coaching program. So there's another opportunity for you. There are our courses with things like the meetup that we do today. So there's multiple ways that you can actually like use right now and implement that stuff, right? And yeah, and to answer your question in the beginning, Malcolm, because you were asking about whether or not Mixes Unpacked will be available again. So what we're going to be doing in the future is I'm going to focus, like the main focus is on our core thing that we offer, which is the Self-Recording Syndicate. That is the coaching program that gives people the best, like, sustainable, like long-term results, basically, because it's a long, in-depth one-on-one program. So that's going to be our main offer. And if you're in there, you get access to all our courses that we have. That's part of the program. But we're also going to be offering our courses in the future again. There's just going to be some different bundles and different options available in the new year. But yeah, there will be access again to these courses in one way or another. And if you want to know about that, the best way to not miss that is to be on our email list, because then we will let you know for sure. We will also let you know on the podcast, I think, but the email list is the best place for that, really. But yeah, we're going to open up the doors again. And if you're in any of our programs, there's always an opportunity to reach out. There's always some sort of community element. There's always some sort of meetup or something, or, it's a part of it, because we really believe in this, and we really believe that you shouldn't just try it on your own. So yeah. There's that. I can't tell exactly what it's going to look like, but we're definitely going to open the doors again to Mixes Unpacked too.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much for listening. As always, it's always a blast. And next episode, big 150.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you for listening. See you in episode 150 next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.